You break the rules and become a hero. I do it and I become the enemy. That doesn't seem fair.
Hey, welcome back, ScreenCrush. I'm Ryan Airy, and Marvel may have just revealed how Wanda Maximoff is going to return to the MCU. In a new issue of the comic Marvel's TVA, they show Wanda in her Multiverse of Madness costume locked inside the TVA, hinting that maybe this is actually where Wanda will be at the start of Avengers Doomsday. Now later, I'm going to be joined by a friend of the channel and the man who originally broke this story, Dodd Seitz, and our very own Wanda superfan Brianna McLarty. And we're going to talk about how this sets up the perfect Doctor Doom intro, and why Loki could be the villain who is behind Wanda's kidnapping. And best of all, this one panel could wipe Secret Invasion off the map so Marvel can start again. And before we get started, I want to let you guys know that you can now listen to ScreenCrush on Spotify, Apple, and anywhere that you get your podcasts. So quick refresher, since it's been 4 years since WandaVision and 3 years since Multiverse of Madness.
Has it really? I am so old.
It's terrible, isn't it?
Well, at the end of WandaVision, Wanda stole the Darkhold, a grimoire filled with dark magic from Agatha Harkness, in an attempt to understand her own abilities.
I'm not a witch. I don't cast spells. No one taught me magic.
By her next appearance in Multiverse of Madness, the Darkhold had corrupted her, turning her fingers black, and causing an obsession with replacing a multiversal variant of herself who still had her children. In that quest, she killed a lot of people, went to Wundagore, and tried to steal a child's power before she was brought back to her senses by a variant of herself.
No good they'll be loved.
So, at the end of Multiverse of Madness, Wanda destroyed Mount Wundagore as well as the Darkhold in every single reality. And she also, theoretically, killed herself in the process.
She is dead though, isn't she, Herb?
Oh, she's really most sincerely dead.
But since the moment the movie ended, people have had their doubts. First of all, we never saw a body, and we all know...
No body, no crime.
And secondly, by the end of Multiverse of Madness, she was the Scarlet Witch. She's one of the most powerful beings in the universe. It'd be way too easy for her to just die by being crushed by a building. I mean, this isn't season 8 of Game of Thrones, right?
But didn't the MCU confirm she died?
No, not technically. In the book, The Marvel Cinematic Universe, an official timeline, they say that Wanda destroys Wundagore and collapses it upon herself, ending 2 great threats to all of the multiverse. So that just says that she's no longer a threat. It doesn't say she died. Now, the theory that the TVA got Wanda actually first emerged after Deadpool and Wolverine. In that movie, we see the Wundagore carving of the Scarlet Witch in the void, implying that the TVA pruned it.
Yeah, well, couldn't that just be the mountain, but from like another universe or something?
I mean, sure, but if the TVA were going out pruning Wundagore mountains, then it would make sense that they would prune the one that we saw in the 616 universe. After all, the TVA are now policing the multiverse and keeping it safe from threats like Time Variance. And in Multiverse of Madness, Wanda shows that she is a major threat to the multiverse. She dreamwalks, which causes universe-destroying incursions. She seeks to replace one of her variants and kidnaps her children. And she changes timelines. And worst of all, we see that she is susceptible to the control of the Darkhold. Also, she even destroyed the only book of Ashanti, and by destroying every Darkhold in the multiverse, she altered innumerable realities and timelines. And as the TVA comic shows us, the TVA is worried about Wanda and her variants. But I'll tell you one thing I am not worried about, and that is the show Daredevil Born Again. I am so excited for that show. And that's why I wanted to show you guys these new Daredevil parody merch that we designed at our merch store. We have this tribute to the hallway fight, no fear, the Fisk will fix it shirt and yard sign, the Rabbit in a Snowstorm shirt and poster and fridge magnet, and this is a replica of the Battle of New York newspaper, and of course we have our classic Nelson and Murdoch Law and Order logo and the Scales of Justice logo. Links for all of those are below. Now, I will say that the artist of the book, Perry Perez, has clarified that the Scarlet Witch seen in the TVA is not the MCU's Wanda, but rather a similar variant. But this still shows us a roadmap of how Wanda will probably return in Avengers Doomsday and Secret Wars. And a little later, I'm going to go into a theory about how Doctor Doom stealing Wanda from the TVA can be one of the most badass scenes ever in the MCU. That would 100% sell me on the idea of Robert Downey Jr. as Doctor Doom. And a little bit later, I'm also going to talk about how Loki could be the reason why these Wanda variants are locked up to begin with. But first, I want to talk to Dodd and Brianna to get their opinions and theories about Wanda's apparent resurrection. So Dodd, you actually wrote this article for Screen Rant, right? So first I want to get your take on this.
I mean, I'm hesitant to say like 100% with certainty that this is like what the MCU is going to do to bring back Wanda. But I will say that like the TVA comic is heavily based off of how the TVA is presented in the MCU and kind of allowing for a little bit of wiggle room within, like, you know, we haven't seen Spider-Gwen in the MCU, but, you know, she can interact with the TVA here in the comics. So it's been kind of like a bridge for some of their other characters to kind of segue them into something that feels like the Marvel universe, I do think it presents a really good possibility. And like, honestly, it could be a really good fix for a lot of the problems that the multiverse saga has implied. Because like in the TVA comic, what actually happens is they find out that like Mobius has been affected by reality shards, and Spider-Gwen is like kind of pushed down to find this lab where she discovers the Scarlet Witch because of her dreams, which implies that Wanda is like being able to manipulate reality even when she's in this chamber of sorts. So anything that we see, anything in the MCU that we didn't like in the multiverse saga that we can kind of just attribute to, ooh, it's just a spooky, weird reality bending thing that Wanda did down at the bottom of the TVA that was affecting the multiverse.
So you're telling me, I feel like it's Dumb and Dumber, you're telling me there's a chance that Secret Invasion is not canon.
There's a chance.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so I was about to ask, because I haven't read this book yet, right? I'm currently reading, I just finished up a bunch of Daredevil, now I'm on a bunch of Fantastic Four, you can guess why. Originally in the comics, the TVA was like a Marvel in-joke for keeping continuity of their books streamlined, right? So you're telling me that this book isn't that necessarily? Is it more, the TVA is more like it is what we see in the MCU?
Yeah, almost exactly like what we see in the MCU, right? Like even Mobius looks like Owen Wilson. I mean, like it's very much made to look and feel like, what if these characters that we haven't seen in the MCU, like Spider-Gwen, could play around in the TVA? And so now TVA number 3 is starting to take that one step further and really start to pull some of those bigger, more significant characters in. And, you know, this also ties with like a lot of everything that we saw in Deadpool and Wolverine, right? With Wanda Gore and the statue being there, and the implications that like if the statue from Wanda Gore is in there, right? The TVA had to have pruned it. And there's only one Darkhold because there's only one Darkhold in the multiverse. So really all the pieces here fit really well.
Well, there's a Darkhold in different universes, but there's only one Book of Ashanti. But Brianna, I know this has to be especially fun for you as a Wanda fangirl. We've been over this, but just for people who are meeting you for the first time, what were your broad stroke thoughts on her treatment in Multiverse of Madness?
Oh, God. Okay, as someone who loves Wanda, I like to test that movie. As someone who loves horror movies, very fun. As someone who really likes Sam Raimi, fun. As someone who loves Wanda, I hate that movie. And the thing is, I will hate it significantly less if they give her a better arc coming out of it. And I just really have always felt, and this is an arc. Yeah, just an arc, please. And I've always felt, even, and this isn't just me being a fangirl, it's never made sense to me for that to be the end of her story, for a lot of reasons. Not seeing the body, very weird. I honestly doubt, with how strong she was in that movie, that she can just, like, die by, like, a building being collapsed on her. I kind of feel like some, like, little part of her brain would just create a force field or something around her. Like, I just don't think she can go down like that. But really, my big reason I don't think it makes sense for her to be dead is I don't think the MCU right now has anyone else that can take on a multiversal threat. Like, not at the same level of her as her. When you have, with really strong superheroes, even superheroes like Captain Marvel, they don't really have any multiverse expertise. You get a little bit of that at the end of the Marvels. But we know Wanda is stronger than Doctor Strange. She beat Doctor Strange without any problems. America Chavez has not made any other appearances. So I think
she could beat America Chavez as well. I mean, America Chavez didn't really beat her. She just won.
Yeah, she just kind of, yeah, exactly. Like, Wanda was the only person that could take herself down.
Like the Roman Empire. The only thing that could destroy Wanda was herself.
Yes. So I think when it comes to something like Doomsday or Secret Wars, I think it'll be really difficult for them to convince me as a fan that Doctor Doom, or I know they've put most of the stuff with Kang to bed, but let's pretend he does come back. I'll be really surprised if, like, anyone other than Wanda could take them down. I mean, unless they do like an Ant-Man 3 thing, which would be very unsatisfying. But it's always made sense for me that she needs to come and fight because they just do not stand a chance. Like, Feige has said she is the strongest person in the MCU. And that was in Endgame. Like, now she's creating, like, bubble realities and it's like serial killing the entire sorcerer, all the sorcerers. So I think it needs to be there for the movies to make sense.
And honestly, when you go back and think about it, right, like when you think of the very concept of Multiverse of Madness, the TVA not being all involved in that movie kind of doesn't really make sense, right? And so, like, this to
unless
me
they
seems...
were, unless like they were behind the scenes. Like that's
Exactly.
the thing about the TVA. There's so much subterfuge in how they do stuff, right?
Right, but like from the perspective of the audience of knowing who they are and being able to see behind the scenes, right? You know, like we would have thought that we would have seen them a lot more in that movie, just given what they do and what they're supposed to be doing, right? So it would make sense, as you're saying, like if they were doing it all along behind the scenes, right? But they just kind of snap Wanda out of, out of that reality at the last second and essentially punished her for her crimes across the multiverse, or at least tried to. Right? And then in doing so, right, create these different realities and abnormalities across the multiverse just by trying to imprison her. I mean, like, that works to me.
I also think it's very possible that sort of like the time travel we see in Endgame, where it was all like self-contained, that everything she was doing with some of the multiversal travel stuff was in the timeline. It was self-contained. It was supposed to happen. And then what wasn't supposed to happen was her destroying all of the Darkholds. And that's why they had to come get her, because that then like sets a ripple effect across pretty much every universe that had Agatha, Wanda, any of these characters that might touch a Darkhold. It's now gone, and I think that might have been her big crime, was the destruction of all of the Darkholds.
Or it could just be a culmination, you know, like we talked about earlier. I think these are all great theories. Now later on, I am going to talk about how we, you know, what we think could be Loki's role in all of this, and like how much of an active hand Loki actually has in running the TVA. But I do want to say that there's a couple things about this theory that I absolutely love. Three things. One, Wanda's alive. That's the best thing. She's going to get a real arc. I think Elizabeth Olsen is confirmed to return, so cool. Two, the fact that we could decanonize Secret Invasion and then do the story right as an Avengers movie. That's amazing to me. But also, as somebody who loves theorizing and coming up with stories, if you have to introduce Doctor Doom, right, as this huge threat to the multiverse, I think you have to begin Doomsday with one of two different scenes. One, he rocks into the arena and he kills all the Kangs. That's one that we'll probably see. Two, I love the idea of Doctor Doom, because we've talked about this in videos in the past, how his time platform is basically the same technology as the TVA's doors. I love the idea of him hacking the TVA doors, coming in, and just Robert Downey Jr., like in Iron Man 3, he has that whole scene where he has his gear and he infiltrates the mansion. Just seeing him do that in the TVA, going down into the dungeon to exactly what he's been looking for, Wanda Maximoff. The idea of like this little thing in the comic being a tease for that moment, like that, I think that opening scene would take all of us who are like not that hyped on Doomsday, and we'd be like, okay, f***ing settle in. Like this is going to be what we were promised, right?
That would be awesome.
And maybe we'll
Send
get
it to Kevin right now. Like that's a great one.
And it ties into Young Avengers, because we know at the beginning of Young Avengers, she's like chilling with Doctor Doom in Latveria and with no memories. She's just like, I don't have kids, I don't know about Westview, I don't know about House of M. So it would make total sense.
I do think that, I don't know, we'll see what happens in Vision Quest, because it's kind of too early for me to predict. I do wonder if Vision Quest might feature Joe Locke reunited at the end. I don't know. It's interesting to see how they're going to adapt Children's Crusade. We've talked about it on the channel, but I really do think it's going to take place in the void. And I love the idea of these kids. And I think it might be a movie. I think there's one movie they haven't announced yet. I love the idea of these kids traveling through different realities. You know, in one reality, they can go to actual Old Man Logan. In the next reality, they could go to, you know, whatever MCU cameos we want to throw in. But unlike a lot of MCU shows, Moon Knight, it would make sense because each episode could be them in a different region of Battle World in the Void. I think that would be a lot of fun.
And then we see Spider-Gwen. And it all
Spider-Gwen.
Makes sense.
Played by Emma Stone. Is that our Spider-Gwen cast, or do you want to go somebody younger?
I kind of want to go someone younger, I think just partially because I really like, I mean, obviously they're very different, but I love the Sonyverse movies. I don't love the Sonyverse movies. I like the animated movies that are into the Spider-Verse, let me be very clear.
We knew what you meant. Although you got to admit, a Craven cameo would be hilarious.
I would die. Like, that would be so cool.
Madam Web. I kind of feel like they could get Aaron Taylor Johnson to do it. Or Dakota Johnson, good luck. I do think
she's
Sydney
never
Sweeney
going
would
up.
come back as Julia Carpenter in a heartbeat if they're not courting her to play the Black Cat.
Yeah, I'm feeling like Black Cat's where she's going, but that is still a good pick.
So that's where I land on this. I'm super excited to see this character back. I think that the Marvel machine just didn't do her arc any justice, and I'm pretty pumped. Does you guys got any final thoughts we want to add in here?
Bring back my girl. That's it.
The potential of like having Wanda, somehow influencing every, misstep that we've had in the multiverse, I think is really, that has a lot of potential to fix a lot of things and kind of reset a lot of things that people didn't like. So that
All right, so
Fingers
here's my
crossed.
last question for both of you guys, okay? So, Dot, I'll start with you since you brought it up, right? Now, like I said, I do have a theory on how Loki can fit into all this. I'm pretty excited to tell you guys. But first, Dodd, I've already taken Secret Invasion. What is the thing that you hope that was in the MCU that was Wanda's fever dream hallucination?
all the reshoots for Brave New World.
Ouch! Coming out
I think that
swinging.
movie, I think that movie would have been so much stronger if I
If
don't
Seth
know
Rollins
which,
was in it.
I don't know which version of that film was the stronger political version of the film, but it definitely felt like I saw clips of it in the movie, right? Just clips, right? That had just been cut away from all the ties of it. And like Captain America as a movie, you had, the first Captain America movie was inherently political. Winter Soldier, probably the most political MCU movie they've ever made. Civil War had even implications like that. I mean, like, all kinds of stuff.
Political light. Come on. Like, the government's watching you, but the government's Hydra, so don't worry about it. Come on.
I mean, for sure. But as far as the MCU goes, that's probably been like the closest that they've ever towed to the line. And I think that they went completely gloves off with Brave New World. And so I would rather like to see Anthony Mackie get, I think, the Captain America movie that he deserves with the punch that it deserves. And that's the one I would have retconned by Wanda if I could. I don't know how, but just make it happen.
Brianna, apart from her arc in, which would be canon, apart from her arc in Multiverse.
I mean, at least half of the jokes in Love and Thunder. Like, just half of them. Just take half of them out, and I'm
Thanos
good.
snap them.
I love that you're so granular, though, that you're not saying the entire movie like Dodd did. You're like, just a little less improvisation from Thor on the boat would have really gone a long way, right?
Please. Like, I wanted to love that movie because I love Ragnarok.
So
and
bad. I was more excited for that than any other. Go ahead, sorry.
Same. No, I was super excited from that. So yeah, no, I want her to come into the real world. Tell Taika Waititi that he cannot just do like complete improvisation. And then she can go back into the MCU and then we'll all remember the movie as just being the movie we all wanted.
I don't know if she could pull that off, but Deadpool definitely can. We've already seen him influence screenplays in other realities, so that's definitely a possibility.
That's true.
So, Dodd, Brianna, thank you guys very much for joining me. And now I want to tell you guys our theory on how Loki could figure into Wanda's resurrection. So, like we just said, the TVA has to be featured in Doomsday and Secret Wars. The show Loki was a real standout from most of the other projects in the saga. It especially stood out as one of the best Disney Plus shows. And this TV series is literally at the center of the multiverse saga. So they have to feature the TVA in Doomsday and Secret Wars. And like I said earlier, having Doom invade the TVA and dismantle it would show that he is more powerful than Kang, even more powerful than Infinity Stones.
Some of the guys use them as paperweights.
But I don't think they can address the TVA or the dying multiverse without including Loki. Loki sits at the center of the multiversal tree, overseeing the branching timelines. But he does not interfere with the timelines. I mean, that way he's able to preserve free will. In the MCU 616 universe alone, think how many events we've seen that threaten entire realities. That means that the multiversal tree is sick and rotting. And Loki's being is now tied to this multiversal tree. So if the multiverse is dying, the rot would be affecting him as well. Like in Doomsday, I think they should show us Loki wasting away on his throne as a visual metaphor to show the dying multiverse. He's trying to keep the multiverse from eating itself, but his power is not enough. That Wanda that we saw in the comic is being held in some kind of stasis chamber, but I wonder if that chamber could also be a kind of battery. Like maybe Loki and the TVA realize that they need some kind of dark magic to sustain the multiverse. Maybe the chaos magic of Chthon is something the TVA needs to stabilize this tree. So if that's the case, the TVA could have several Wandas trapped in tubes and they're like siphoning off their energies. So when Doom saves Wanda, like I talked about earlier, at first we think he's a hero. But then, like in the book Children's Crusade that Brianna mentioned, he instead uses Wanda for his own evil plans. But that's just our theories. What do you guys think? Is this how Wanda should return? Should Wanda return at all? Let us know down in the comments below or on our free to join Discord server. And if it's your first time time here, please subscribe and smash that bell for alerts. For ScreenCrush, I'm Ryan Airy.